This video gives you a short breakdown of the process of creating a custom building generator using the XBuildings toolset in combination with Blender and Houdini. At the beginning I collected images as references. In this case I took the photos myself in my current hometown Stuttgart in Germany. Then in preparation for modeling I divided each building wall, such as the front wall here, into sections. For the actual modeling, I first created a reference mesh and determined a width and a height for each wall segment, but also the general thickness of the walls. The front, the outer wall position should be at 0 on the forward axis. In Blender this is the y-axis. The front side protrudes, or the side walls are not as far out, if we consider the outer wall as a bounding box. Therefore, a second reference mesh for the side walls have been moved slightly in the minus direction of the forward axis. Based on this reference meshes, I then modeled and aligned the individual wall elements, such as this window segment. I also assigned materials to each geometry and textured the parts. However, I did not create a UV map for the walls, but only assigned the materials for the outer and inner wall, as this geometry merges with neighboring walls and thus automatically receive new UVs in the process. Besides wall elements, I also created other geometries like roof tiles, door frames or a chimney, but also base meshes for the final buildings. To finish the modeling, I exported each collection or element group separately as FBX. You have to adjust the scaling as well as the forward and up axis so that the elements are arranged accordingly in Houdini. In Houdini itself, I simply imported the files. For the building generator, I first created a subnet with two geometry nodes. One to define the input for the building base mesh and one to generate the actual building. I set the input separately because with other building base meshes I just need to change this one input. I then used this input node as input in the building generator, as you can see here. In this project there are several building generator nodes to get different outputs. One with the base mesh as output, which is used for roofs and interior facades, and two to represent exterior wall geometries and random objects. The latter could also be just one. After the input of the base geometry, I set the base mesh settings like the target height and width. These values should be the same as for the reference geometry. The next step was to define the pattern. Here we see the final pattern. The patterns are created by the reference images. Each area gets a number. Areas that are the same have the same number. In this picture we also see that the windows on the far right and on the far left need their own IDs, because they have ends on the right and on the left, as shown here again. For this reason, separate patterns have been defined for the corner segments, as shown here for example. After integrating the patterns, I created a wall segment for each ID, selected the mode, in this case mostly stretch, and made settings like integrating the geometry from Blender. What is also worth mentioning here, as we see here, there are 4 areas that belong together. If one area would be missing due to the pattern generation, an optical error would be visible. That is why you can also define protected IDs. This means that a geometry, a wall segment, is only generated if the neighbors exist as defined in the pattern. Otherwise, alternative geometry is used, which can or should be defined for each geometry. As described, I also spawned random objects for certain wall segments like blinds or shutters by using a second building generator. In the next step I created the roof as well as the roof elements as chimneys and tiles. It also generated some rain gutters. In addition, I also generated interior, starting with the floors. I built the walls on the top of that. By painting, I created the pattern. For example, I can simply go into the node and paint a line here and let the wall be generated. For this I also integrated my own wall geometry. The last part was the generation of door areas. This works according to the same principle as for the walls, as you can see here. Afterwards I exported the final geometries and imported them into Blender. Here the scaling as well as the forward axis and up axis have to be undone. If you now look at the imported geometry, we notice that the materials are not visible. This is because the materials are duplicated during the import. However, this can be fixed quickly with a script from the internet. This is the process of using XBuildings not only to create your own building generator, but also to work flexible and non-destructive. For example, I could now change a window, and by overwriting the FBX files, all buildings would update automatically in a minute. For more information, just visit this link or watch other videos on this channel.